Pine Grove had always been a quiet town where everyone knew their neighbors and doors stayed unlocked at night. For Emma Carter, it was the perfect place to rebuild her life after losing her husband, working 2 jobs to give her teenage daughter Lila the future she deserved while staying connected to her son Ryan through encrypted messages from his classified SEAL missions overseas. But when she accidentally witnessed the Iron Vultures motorcycle gang unloading suspicious crates in a dark alley behind May's diner, Emma's simple life began to unravel. Now, trapped in a mountain compound with other captives, she was learning firsthand why the notorious gang had managed to terrorize the region with impunity. Vance and his crew thought they were just silencing a troublesome waitress who'd seen too much. They had no idea that the quiet, determined woman they'd kidnapped had spent years raising a warrior. As the Iron Vultures celebrated their latest acquisition, they couldn't know that somewhere across the world, a highly trained Navy SEAL had just received an emergency code that would send him racing home. They were about to learn a brutal lesson about family bonds and why you should never take a mother from her children. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The morning sun hadn't yet peeked over the horizon when Emma Carter's alarm pierced through the darkness. Her hand instinctively reached for the phone, silencing it before the sound could wake her teenage daughter sleeping in the next room. 4:30 a.m., another day was beginning in Pine Grove, and Emma had mouths to feed. She moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, the floorboards creaking softly beneath her feet as she navigated the modest two-bedroom house she called home for the past 15 years. The mirror reflected a woman in her early 40s, her brown hair touched with the earliest strands of silver, amber eyes carrying both warmth and determination. Emma pulled her hair back into a neat ponytail, donned her waitress uniform, and headed to the kitchen. The smell of coffee soon filled the small space as Emma prepared lunch for her daughter, Lila. 17 years old and already showing the same stubborn spirit that ran in the Carter family, Lila was the spitting image of her father, a thought that brought both joy and a familiar ache to Emma's heart. "Mom?" Lila's sleepy voice carried from the hallway. "You're making enough noise to wake the dead." Emma turned to find her daughter leaning against the doorframe, dark hair tousled from sleep. "Sorry, sweetie. Go back to bed. You've got another hour before school." "Can't sleep anyway," Lila mumbled, sliding into a kitchen chair. "Any word from Ryan?" Emma's face softened at the mention of her son. "Actually, yes. Got an encrypted message last night after you went to bed." She pulled out her phone, opening a secure messaging app that her Navy SEAL son had insisted they use. The message was brief but brought comfort nonetheless. "Mom, all's well. Can't say where, but we're making a difference. Tell the squirt to keep her grades up. College applications are closer than she thinks. Love you both. Stay safe. R." Lila rolled her eyes at the squirt comment, but couldn't hide her smile. "Show off. Just because he's some big-shot SEAL now doesn't mean he gets to lecture me about grades. He's looking out for you," Emma said, placing a cup of hot chocolate in front of her daughter. "It's what big brothers do." The familiar routine of morning preparation was interrupted by the buzz of Emma's phone, her reminder to leave for her first job of the day. She worked the morning shift at May's Diner from 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., then headed to the local library where she handled administrative work from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. It wasn't an easy schedule, but it kept food on the table and would help with Lila's college expenses. "Lock up when you leave for school," Emma reminded Lila, gathering her things. "And text me when you get there." "Mom, I'm not 12 anymore," Lila protested. "Humor me," Emma replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Love you." The pre-dawn air was crisp as Emma made her way to her aging Honda Civic. Pine Grove was usually peaceful at this hour, but lately there had been changes. The rumble of motorcycles often broke the quiet, even in the early morning hours. The Iron Vultures, a motorcycle gang that had moved into town 6 months ago, were making their presence known more each day. May's Diner sat at the corner of Main and Cedar, its neon sign casting a warm glow in the darkness. Emma found her boss, May Peterson, already inside, preparing for the day. The older woman looked up as Emma entered, concern etched on her face. "Emma, honey, you didn't walk here, did you?" May asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "No, took the car today," Emma replied, tying on her own apron. Why? May's voice lowered, though they were alone in the diner. Those bikers were causing trouble again last night. Broke up a fight right outside the hardware store. Thompson's windows got smashed. Emma's stomach tightened. The Iron Vultures? Who else? May shook her head. Sheriff can't, or won't do anything about them. Word is they've got connections in high places. She placed a hand on Emma's arm. Just be careful when you're closing up, okay? Especially on late nights. The morning rush kept Emma busy, her mind occupied with orders and coffee refills rather than troubling thoughts about the gang. Regular customers filled the booths. Mr. Jenkins with his usual scrambled eggs and toast. The high school teachers grabbing coffee before first period. Truck drivers stopping for breakfast on their routes. It wasn't until her afternoon shift at the library that Emma noticed the first signs of something wrong. A motorcycle would pass by the building every hour or so, its rider moving slowly, deliberately. The third time it happened, Emma recognized the leather jacket with the Iron Vultures emblem, a steel-gray bird of prey with blood-red eyes. That evening, as Emma locked up the library, the street seemed unusually quiet. Her footsteps echoed as she walked to her car, keys clutched tightly in her hand. The route home took her past the diner, where she noticed unusual activity in the alley behind the building. The responsible thing would have been to drive past, but something made Emma slow down. In the dim light, she could make out several figures unloading large crates from a truck. The Iron Vultures motorcycles were parked nearby, their chrome glinting in the streetlight. Emma's heart pounded as she watched a tall man with a silver-streaked beard directing the operation. Even from a distance, his authority was clear. This had to be Vance, the gang's leader she'd heard whispered about in town. The contents of one crate caught the light as it was moved, and Emma glimpsed what looked like weapons. She must have gasped or made some small sound because Vance's head suddenly snapped up, his eyes scanning the darkness. Emma ducked down in her car, but not before she saw him point toward her direction, sending two of his men to investigate. With trembling hands, Emma started her car and drove away as calmly as she could manage, taking a circuitous route home in case she was followed. Her mind raced with what she'd witnessed. Weapons trafficking, it had to be. The gang wasn't just causing trouble. They were running serious criminal operations right in the heart of Pine Grove. When she finally reached home, Emma sat in her car for several minutes, trying to steady her breathing. Lila would be waiting inside, probably wondering where she was. She couldn't let her daughter see her fear. Taking a deep breath, Emma checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, smoothed her hair, and forced a smile. She could do this. She'd been putting on a brave face for her children since their father died 8 years ago. This was no different. Inside, Lila was sprawled on the couch, textbooks spread around her. She looked up as Emma entered. "Hey, Mom, you're late." "Traffic," Emma lied, hanging up her coat. "How was school?" Lila's expression clouded. "Weird, actually. There were some bikers hanging around during lunch break. Teachers called the police, but they were gone by the time they showed up." Emma's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice casual. "The Iron Vultures?" "Yeah. Jenny said they were talking to her brother, Tyler, trying to recruit him, or something." Lila sat up, hugging a pillow to her chest. "It's scary, Mom. They're everywhere lately." Emma sat beside her daughter, pulling her close. "I know, sweetie, but they can't do anything to us. We keep our heads down, stay out of their way, and they'll leave us alone." Later that night, after Lila had gone to bed, Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. She should call the police, report what she'd seen. But May's words echoed in her mind. Connections in high places. And what if they didn't believe her? Or worse, what if they did, but the Iron Vultures found out she talked? She opened the secure messaging app, wanting desperately to tell Ryan what was happening. But what could he do from wherever he was stationed? The last thing she wanted was for him to worry about them when he needed to focus on his mission. Instead, she typed, "We're fine here. Lila's doing well in school. Miss you. Stay safe. Love, Ma." Her finger hovered over the send button when movement outside caught her eye. Through the kitchen window, she saw a motorcycle cruise slowly past the house, its rider's head turned toward their home. A minute later, another followed. Emma's hands shook as she added one more line to her message. "Please check in when you can." She sent the message and drew the curtains tight, double-checking all the locks before heading to bed. As she lay in the darkness, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her life in Pine Grove was about to change dramatically. The Iron Vultures were watching her, and she had no idea what to do about it. The sound of motorcycles rumbled in the distance, a reminder that in this small town, there was nowhere to hide from those who meant harm. Emma closed her eyes, trying to find sleep, but her mind kept returning to the images from the alley, the crates, the weapons, and Vance's cold eyes searching the darkness for whoever had witnessed his operation. Tomorrow would bring another day of serving coffee, checking out library books, and maintaining normalcy for Lila's sake. But now, Emma carried a dangerous secret, one that threatened to shatter the quiet life she'd built for her family. As she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Ryan, wishing he was closer to home, never imagining that soon, her son's particular set of skills would become their only hope for survival. The morning started like any other in the Carter household. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Emma packed Lila's lunch, the routine so familiar she could do it with her eyes closed. The events of the previous night, the suspicious crates, the searching bikers, weighed heavily on her mind, but she forced a smile as Lila came bouncing down the stairs, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mom, Jenny's picking me up early today," Lila announced, grabbing a piece of toast. "We've got that chemistry project to finish before first period." Emma checked her watch, 7:15 a.m. "Okay, sweetie. Text me when you get there." "Always do." Lila paused at the door, studying her mother's face. "You okay, Mom? You look tired." "Just didn't sleep well," Emma assured her. "Nothing to worry about." Lila hesitated, then crossed the kitchen to give her mother a quick hug. "Love you." "Love you too, baby." The sound of a car horn outside made Lila jump. "That's Jenny. See you after school." Emma watched through the window as her daughter climbed into Jenny Martinez's blue Volkswagen, the two girls chattering animatedly as they drove away. She let out a long breath, shoulders slumping slightly. The house felt eerily quiet. She was rinsing her coffee cup when she heard it, the low rumble of motorcycles approaching. Not just one or two, but several. Emma's heart began to race as the engines cut off outside her house. Moving quickly to the living room window, she peered through the curtains. 5 motorcycles were parked along the curb, their riders dismounting with practiced ease. Each wore the Iron Vulture's signature leather jacket, the steel gray bird of prey emblazoned across the back. But it was their leader who made Emma's blood run cold. Vance stood a head taller than his men, his silver-streaked beard and weathered face making him look like some ancient warrior chief. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the house methodically. Then, as if sensing her gaze, he looked directly at her window. Emma stumbled back, mind racing. The phone, she needed to call someone. But before she could reach it, the front door burst open with a deafening crash. Training kicked in, the self-defense classes she'd taken after John died, insisted upon by Ryan. Emma grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the side table, swinging it at the first man through the door. It connected with a satisfying crunch, sending him staggering backward. "Feisty one, ain't she?" a rough voice laughed. 2 more men rushed in. Emma fought like a cornered animal, kicking, scratching, even managing to break one man's nose with a well-placed elbow. But they kept coming, and she was just one woman. A massive arm wrapped around her waist from behind, lifting her off her feet. Emma slammed her head backward, feeling cartilage crunch as she connected with someone's nose, but the grip didn't loosen. "Enough!" Vance's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He entered unhurried, surveying the scene with mild amusement. 3 of his men were bleeding, and Emma's living room looked like a tornado had torn through it. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice deceptively gentle, "we need to have a conversation about what you saw last night." "I didn't see anything," Emma spat, still struggling against the iron grip that held her. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now, we both know that's not true. You were very interested in our little delivery operation. Interested enough to slow down and watch. Interested enough to run when you were spotted. I don't know what you're talking about." "No." Vance picked up a framed photo from the scattered debris. Emma, Lila, and Ryan at his Navy graduation. His thumb traced over Ryan's face. "Beautiful family. It would be a shame if something happened to them." Emma went still, eyes flooding her veins. "Leave them out of this." "That depends entirely on you, Mrs. Carter." Vance set the photo down carefully. You haven't gone to the police yet. Smart woman. But we can't take chances. You'll be coming with us for a little insurance. Like hell I will, Emma snarled, renewing her struggles. Vance sighed, as if disappointed by her resistance. Craig the bag. A dark hood was forced over Emma's head, cutting off her vision. She fought harder, but more hands grabbed her, immobilizing her arms and legs. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Vance's voice came from somewhere to her left. You're coming with us either way. The only question is whether you walk out of here under your own power, or if we carry you out. Emma's mind raced. If she kept fighting, they might knock her unconscious. She needed to stay aware, to know where they were taking her. Slowly, she forced her muscles to relax. Smart choice, Vance approved. Let's move. They half led, half dragged her outside. The morning air was cool on her skin, birds chirping obliviously in the trees. Such a normal sound for such a horrific moment. Emma tried to memorize every detail, the number of steps to the vehicle, the direction they turned, the sound of the engine. They pushed her into what felt like a van, the floor cold and metallic under her hands. Someone bound her wrists with zip ties, pulling them painfully tight. Remember, Vance's voice came from nearby. This is just insurance. Keep quiet about what you saw, and you'll be home soon enough. Make trouble. You let the threat hang in the air. The van's engine roared to life, and they began to move. Emma focused on counting turns, trying to map their route in her head. Left straight for what felt like 10 minutes, right up an incline. The road grew rougher, suggesting they were heading into the mountains that bordered Pine Grove to the north. Time became fluid in the darkness of the hood. Emma's shoulders ached from the awkward position, and her mouth was dry with fear, but she refused to show it. She thought of Lila, safely at school, unaware that her mother had been taken. She thought of Ryan, somewhere across the world, who had taught her to be strong. She would not break. She would not beg. The van finally came to a stop, and rough hands pulled her out. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, gravel or dirt. The air smelled of pine needles and moisture. They were definitely in the mountains. Emma was marched forward, up what felt like wooden steps, through a door, and down what seemed to be a long hallway. The hood was finally yanked off, leaving her blinking in dim fluorescent light. She found herself in what appeared to be an old hunting lodge, converted for the gang's use. The windows were boarded up, leaving only thin strips of natural light. The space smelled of cigarette smoke, leather, and fear. Your new accommodations. Vance gestured to a small room, more of a closet really, with a thin mattress on the floor. Make yourself comfortable. We'll talk more later. As they shoved her inside, Emma caught glimpses of other doors along the hallway. Through one that stood slightly ajar, she saw a young woman huddled in the corner, her face bruised. Their eyes met briefly before Emma's door was slammed shut. Other captives. The Iron Vultures weren't just weapons traffickers. They were human traffickers too. Emma sat on the mattress, her bound hands in her lap, and forced herself to think clearly. The room was small but not airtight. She could feel a draft from somewhere. The walls were rough wooden planks, some warped with age and moisture. The door was solid, but the hinges looked old. Hours passed. Emma could hear movement outside her door. Boots on wooden floors, muffled conversations, occasional laughter. She began to distinguish different voices, different patterns of speech. The guards changed regularly. She could tell by the varying weight of their footsteps. Late in the afternoon, the door opened again. Vance entered, followed by a younger man with olive skin and troubled eyes. This must be Rocco, the second-in-command Emma had heard mentioned in whispered conversations through the walls. Ready to talk? Vance pulled up a metal folding chair, sitting backwards on it to face her. I told you, I don't know anything. See, that's where you're wrong. Vance leaned forward. You saw our delivery. Question is, who did you tell about it? Nobody, Emma insisted. I didn't tell anyone. Your son. Vance nodded toward the door, where another gang member held the graduation photo they'd taken from her house. He's military. Special forces, by the look of that uniform. Did you tell him? He's deployed, Emma said truthfully. I haven't spoken to him. Vance studied her face for long moments. Behind him, Rocco shifted uncomfortably. Boss, Rocco spoke up, his voice surprisingly gentle. Maybe she's telling the truth. We've been watching her house. No unusual calls, no visits from law enforcement. Better safe than sorry. Vance replied without looking away from Emma. Besides, she serves another purpose now. The town needs to understand what happens to people who stick their noses where they don't belong. Emma met his gaze steadily, though her heart was pounding. You can't keep me here forever. People will look for me. Let them look. Vance stood, pushing the chair aside. By the time anyone finds this place, if they ever do, you'll either be gone or you'll have learned to keep your mouth shut. After they left, Emma began to examine her surroundings more carefully. The wooden walls were old, some boards loose enough that she could work her fingernails into the gaps. Using a splitter sheet worked free, she began to carve tiny marks into the wood, dates, times, anything that might help identify when she was here if someone found this place. Through the thin walls, she could hear fragments of conversations. The gang members had different roles, different relationships. Some, like Rocco, seemed uncomfortable with their current direction. Others reveled in the violence and fear they created. Emma noted everything, building a mental map of the organization. Vance ruled through fear and charisma, but there were cracks in his authority. Rocco's reluctance was the most obvious, but there were others. Younger members who seemed to chafe under Vance's increasingly brutal leadership. As night fell, Emma could hear the gang gathering in what seemed to be a main room. Their voices grew louder, fueled by alcohol and bravado. The Carter woman, one voice carried clearly through the walls. She's just the beginning. Anyone in town gives us trouble, they'll get the same treatment. Or their kids will. Another voice laughed. Emma's blood ran cold at the casual cruelty, but she forced herself to keep listening, keep learning. Every piece of information could be valuable. Every weakness she discovered might be useful. In her pocket, hidden during the initial search, she still had a small pin from her waitress uniform. As voices continued to drift through the walls, she worked it into the wood around one of the hinges, slowly, carefully, planning for a moment that might never come, but refusing to give up hope. Meanwhile, across town, Lila was returning home from school. The sight of the broken door sent her running inside, calling for her mother. The ransacked living room, the overturned furniture, the spots of blood on the carpet, it all told a horrific story. With trembling hands, Lila pulled out her phone and opened the secure messaging app Ryan had given them. She typed in the emergency code he'd made them memorize. Blackbird down. Thousands of miles away, a Navy SEAL's phone would buzz with that message, setting in motion events that would shake Pine Grove to its foundations. But for now, Emma sat in her tiny prison, carving another mark into the wall, counting the hours until dawn, and listening to the sounds of her captors planning their next moves. She thought of Lila, praying her daughter would remember the emergency protocols Ryan had established. She thought of her son, wishing she could tell him she was okay, that she would stay strong until help came. A loud burst of laughter echoed through the walls, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Emma closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing, on staying calm and alert. She was more than just a hostage. She was a mother, a survivor, and now, an observer gathering intelligence that might prove crucial in bringing down the Iron Vultures. In the darkness of her cell, Emma Carter began to plan, to watch, and to wait. The gang thought they had captured a simple waitress, a woman they could use to send a message to the town. They would learn, perhaps too late, that they had captured a warrior's mother, and she was far from helpless. Outside her door, boots scraped on wooden floors as guards changed shifts. Emma made another mark on the wall, a testament to her presence, a breadcrumb for those who might come looking. Then she settled back on her thin mattress, eyes fixed on the strip of moonlight that filtered through a crack in the boards, and began to count the hours until dawn. Somewhere in the Hindu Kush Mountains, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Carter lay motionless in the snow, his white winter camouflage blending seamlessly with the terrain. Through his scope, he watched the compound below where his SEAL team had tracked a high-value target. 6 hours they'd been in position, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Eagle 2, status report. His commander's voice crackled through his earpiece. Clear shot on the north entrance, Ryan whispered. 2 tangos on patrol, maintaining previous pattern. The familiar weight of his rifle pressed against his shoulder as he controlled his breathing, just as he'd been trained. And hold out, slow and steady. The target would emerge soon, and everything had to be perfect. His phone buzzed silently in his chest pocket, the secure one he kept for family emergencies. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. His mother and sister knew better than to message during an operation unless... Eagle 2, maintain position, the commander ordered. Ryan didn't move, didn't even blink as he kept his scope trained on the entrance. But his mind was suddenly back in Pine Grove, in the kitchen where he'd given them the emergency protocols. If anything ever goes wrong, he told them, if you're ever in real danger, send this code, Blackbird down. I'll know you mean it, and I'll come home. The phone buzzed again. Target approaching, another team member reported. 60 seconds to execute. With practiced precision, Ryan adjusted his aim, ready for the shot that would complete their mission. But something felt wrong. The emergency phone had never buzzed during an operation before. Never. 30 seconds. Moving only his left hand, Ryan pulled out the phone and glanced at the screen. His blood turned colder than the mountain snow. Blackbird down. 10 seconds. Ryan's finger tightened on the trigger, then relaxed. Eagle 1, we have a situation. Maintain position. Eagle 2, his commander's voice hardened. Sir, I have a family emergency authentication code. Permission to pass sniper duties to Eagle 4. Negative. Maintain position. 5 seconds. The target emerged from the building, exactly as their intelligence had predicted. Ryan had the perfect shot, one that could end months of planning and surveillance. But somewhere in Pine Grove, his family needed him. Sir, I'm invoking Protocol 7-1, Ryan said firmly. Eagle 4 has the shot. There was a moment of tense silence. Protocol 7-1 was rarely used. The right of a SEAL to step down from a mission due to immediate family emergency. Using it could end a career if the emergency proved less than critical. Eagle 4, do you have the shot? The commander finally asked. Affirmative, sir. I have a solution. Take it. The crack of the rifle came from Ryan's left as Eagle 4 executed the mission. Below, chaos erupted in the compound, but Ryan was already moving, sliding backward through the snow. 20 minutes later, he stood before his commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, in their forward operating base. The mission had been successful, but the tension in the room was palpable. This better be good, Carter, Mitchell growled. You've never pulled something like this before? Sir, I received an emergency authentication code from my sister. Something's wrong at home. We're in the middle of a critical operation. Your team needs you here. Ryan stood at rigid attention, his face betraying none of the turmoil he felt inside. Sir, in 6 years with the teams, I've never asked for emergency leave. I've never missed a mission, never failed an objective. But right now, my family needs me. Mitchell studied him for a long moment. He'd known Ryan since he'd first qualified for the teams, knew his record, his dedication, his unwavering loyalty to both his military and blood family. Your sister, she knows what that code means? The consequences of using it. Yes, sir. She wouldn't have sent it unless someone's life was in danger. Mitchell sighed, rubbing his temples. You're one of my best, Carter. But if this turns out to be anything less than a genuine emergency, it won't be, sir. I stake my career on it. Another long pause. You have 72 hours. Get to the airfield. I'll have transport arranged. Thank you, sir. Carter, Mitchell called as Ryan turned to leave. Whatever's happening back there, handle it like a SEAL. The journey home was a blur of military transports and commercial flights. Ryan spent every moment studying his phone, but no new messages had come through. He'd tried calling both his mother and sister, but the calls went straight to voicemail. When he finally pulled up to their house in a rental car, his worst fears were confirmed. The front door hung off its hinges, and Lila's car was parked haphazardly in the driveway, as if she'd rushed home in a panic. Lila, he called out, entering with the careful precision ingrained by years of combat training. It's Ryan. Ryan. His sister's voice broke as she ran down the stairs, throwing herself into his arms. She was trembling, her face streaked with tears. They took Mom. The Iron Vultures. They took her. Ryan held his sister tight, his military training warring with his brotherly instincts. When? This morning after I left for school, I came home and found. She gestured helplessly at the destruction around them. The neighbors said they saw motorcycles, but nobody called the police. They're all too scared. You did the right thing calling me, Ryan assured her, leading her to sit on the stairs, the only furniture that wasn't overturned. Now tell me everything you know about these Iron Vultures. As Lila explained about the gang's growing presence in town, Ryan surveyed the scene with a professional eye. Signs of a fierce struggle. His mother hadn't gone quietly. Blood drops on the carpet, probably from the attackers, based on the pattern. Tire tracks in the dirt outside from a van, distinct from the motorcycle tracks. Mom saw something, Lila finished. The night before, at the diner. She was acting weird when she came home, but she wouldn't tell me what was wrong. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight. Stay here. I'm going to check the rest of the house. Room by room, he cataloged evidence of the kidnapping. A torn piece of leather from one of the gang's jackets, caught on a broken lamp. Boot prints in various sizes, suggesting at least 5 attackers. And most telling, the family photo from his graduation was missing from its usual place. In his old room, Ryan opened the false bottom of his desk drawer, retrieving the burner phone he'd left there for emergencies. He dialed a number from memory. Yeah, a gruff voice answered. Jack, it's Ryan Carter. I'm calling in that favor you owe me. A pause. The thing in Kandahar? That's the one. I need gear, Jack. Off the books. Where are you? Pine Grove. Family emergency. Jesus, Carter, that's only 2 hours from me. What kind of gear we talking about? Ryan listed his requirements quickly and efficiently. Jack whistled low. That's not gear for a family emergency, brother. That's gear for a war. Sometimes they're the same thing. Another pause. Give me 4 hours. I'll bring it myself. Ryan ended the call and headed back downstairs. Lila had made coffee, her hands steadier now that she had something to focus on. The sheriff, she said as he entered the kitchen. We should talk to him. We will, Ryan agreed. But first, tell me more about the diner. What exactly did Mom say? Nothing specific. Just that she was working late, and... Lila's eyes widened. The alley. She mentioned something about the alley behind the diner. Said it wasn't safe to park there anymore. Ryan was already moving. Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. The drive to May's diner took less than 10 minutes. The alley behind it was narrow, lined with dumpsters and delivery entrances. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. But Ryan hadn't survived multiple combat tours by taking things at first glance. Methodically, he searched the area. Behind a dumpster, he found what he was looking for, discarded packaging materials with foreign shipping marks, the kind used for weapons transportation. The Iron Vultures weren't just a typical motorcycle gang. They were arms traffickers. His next stop was the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a man in his 50s who'd clearly given up on staying in shape for the job. He practically withered under Ryan's intense stare. Look, son, Bradley said, sweating despite the office's air conditioning. I understand you're worried about your mother. But these men, they're not just some local troublemakers. No, Ryan agreed coldly. They're weapons traffickers who've kidnapped a U.S. citizen. Where's their base of operations? I don't know, Bradley insisted. And if I did, they've got connections, Carter. Powerful ones. My hands are tied. Your hands are tied because you let them get tied. Ryan stood, looming over the desk. But mine aren't. When this is over, we're going to have another conversation about your definition of protect and serve. He left the sheriff's office more convinced than ever that he'd need to handle this without official support. His next stop was Mick's Auto Repair, the only garage in town equipped to handle motorcycle maintenance. Mick Turner was a heavy-set man with grease-stained hands and shifty eyes. He tried to avoid Ryan's questions until Ryan mentioned how interested certain federal agencies would be in a garage that serviced vehicles used in weapons trafficking. Look, Mick finally broke, pulling out a worn map of the county. They've got a place up in the mountains. Old hunting lodge converted into some kind of compound. They come in for repairs, talk about the bad road up there, the wear and tear on their bikes. He marked a location on the map with a trembling hand. That's all I know, I swear. Just don't tell them I told you. Ryan studied the map, memorizing the location and the surrounding terrain. The lodge would be defensible, isolated, perfect for their operation. By the time he returned home, Jack was waiting in the driveway, a nondescript van parked behind him. The two men had served together for 3 years before Jack left the teams for private security work. Brought everything you asked for, Jack said by way of greeting. Plus a few extras. Figured you might need them. They unloaded the gear in the garage. Weapons, tactical equipment, communications gear, even basic medical supplies. Everything a SEAL might need for a direct action mission. You sure about this? Jack asked as they finished. Going in alone is suicide, brother. Let me call some of our old team. No time. Ryan checked the action on a suppressed .23 Malawian Quatch's pistol. Besides, more people means more chances of being spotted. I need to do this quiet. At least let me watch your back, Jack insisted. I owe you that much. Ryan considered it. Having someone he trusted to provide overwatch would increase his chances of success. But this wasn't a sanctioned mission. If things went wrong, they'd both face serious consequences. Your choice, he finally said. But this is personal, not professional. No one would blame you for walking away. Jack's response was to begin checking his own weapon. Brother, you saved my life in Kandahar. I'm not walking away now. As the sun began to set, Ryan spread the map across the kitchen table. Lila and Jack gathered around him. The hunting lodge was located in a remote area, accessible only by a single dirt road that wound through the mountains. I'll approach from the north. Ryan traced the route with his finger. There's better cover, and they won't expect anyone to come that way. Jack, I need you here on this ridge. You'll have clear lines of sight to both the entrance and the access road. What about me? Lila asked. I want to help. Ryan looked at his sister. No longer the little girl he'd left behind, but a young woman with their mother's determination in her eyes. I need you to be our eyes in town, he said. Watch for any unusual movement from the gang members still here. But stay safe. Mom would never forgive me if anything happened to you. As night fell, Ryan began his final preparations. He donned the tactical gear Jack had brought, checking each piece with practiced efficiency. The weight of the equipment was familiar, comforting, like putting on a second skin. Ryan, Lila caught his arm as he headed for the door. Bring her home? He hugged his sister tightly. I promise. In the driveway, Jack was already loading his sniper rifle into his truck. You know, he said casually, Lieutenant Commander Mitchell called me. Ryan paused. And said to remind you to handle this like a SEAL. Jack grinned. I told him you never handle anything any other way. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Let's go get my mom. As they drove toward the mountains, Ryan thought about his mother, her strength, her determination to give her children a good life after their father died. She'd supported his dream of becoming a SEAL, even though it meant watching another man she loved go into danger. Now it was his turn to be there for her. The Iron Vultures had no idea what was coming. They thought they were dealing with a simple waitress and her family. They were about to learn that they'd kidnapped a Navy SEAL's mother, and he was bringing all his training, all his experience, and all his determination home to Pine Grove. The hunt was about to begin. Night had fallen at the Iron Vultures' mountain hideout, and Emma Carter sat motionless in her small cell, ears straining to catch every word floating through the thin walls. The gang members had gathered in what they called the war room, close enough for their voices to carry, but far enough that Emma had to concentrate to make out what they were saying. The operation's growing too big for just Pine Grove, a gravelly voice she recognized as Tank, one of Vance's lieutenants, was saying. We got buyers asking for more merchandise. Merchandise. Emma's stomach turned at their casual dehumanization of their captives. What about the Barrett deal? Another voice asked. They want 20 girls minimum, Tank replied. Young ones like that batch we got from the truck stop last month. Said they'll pay double for any with special skills, musicians, dancers, that kind of thing. We can expand to Riverside, someone suggested. Bigger population, more runaways. Nobody notices when they go missing. Emma closed her eyes, fighting waves of nausea. This wasn't just about weapons anymore. The Iron Vultures were running a full-scale human trafficking operation, and it was growing. A quiet sob from the cell next to hers drew Emma's attention. Through a small gap in the wooden wall, she could see a young girl, couldn't be more than 16, curled up on her mattress. Hey, Emma whispered. Can you hear me? The sobbing stopped. After a moment, a whispered reply came. Yes. I'm Emma. What's your name? Sarah, the girl sniffled. They grabbed me from the bus station in Millbrook. I was running away from home. But now, listen to me, Sarah. Emma kept her voice low but firm. "We're going to get out of here. All of us. But you need to stay strong. Can you do that?" A pause. "How can you be so sure?" Emma thought of Ryan, of his training, of his promise to always protect his family. "Because I know help is coming. We just need to be ready when it does." Over the next few days, Emma began building connections with other captives. A whispered word of encouragement here, a shared story there. She learned their names: Sarah, the runaway; Jenny, a college student grabbed from a parking lot; Lucia, who spoke little English but whose eyes held a fighter spirit. Through the walls, she could hear their quiet conversations, their growing determination. They were no longer just scared victims. They were becoming a network, sharing information and hope. One afternoon, Emma's attention was drawn to raised voices from Vance's office. She pressed her ear to the wall, recognizing Rocco's distinctive accent. "This isn't what I signed up for, Vance," Rocco was saying. "Weapons are one thing, but trafficking kids? We're supposed to be outlaws, not monsters." "We're businessmen," Vance's cold voice replied. "Supply and demand. The buyers want young, we give them young. It's wrong, and you know it." The crew's getting nervous. Some of them have daughters of their own. "Getting soft, Rocco? Maybe you need a reminder of what happens to people who cross me." "Is that a threat?" "It's business. Like that waitress in there. Her kid's military, special forces. You think that's a coincidence?" She was probably gathering intel for months. Emma's heart skipped a beat. They knew about Ryan. "She's just a mother who saw something she shouldn't have," Rocco argued. "This paranoia is getting out of hand." "Paranoia keeps us alive," Vance snapped. "Double the guard on her cell. If her son is really special forces, he might try something stupid. And the other girls? Move them to the basement. If anyone does try a rescue, they'll have to go through the whole compound to reach them." Emma heard Rocco's footsteps storming away, followed by the sound of something heavy being thrown against a wall in Vance's office. She filed the information away carefully. Rocco's growing dissent, Vance's paranoia, the plan to move the captives. Over the next few days, Emma watched the compound's routines with growing attention to detail. Guards changed shifts every 6 hours. The main gate was always manned by 2 men, but the back entrance sometimes dropped to 1 during mealtimes. Supply trucks came on Tuesdays and Fridays, always backing up to the loading dock on the east side. She noticed other things too. The way some guards were more careful than others during cell checks, the locations of security cameras, the blind spots in their coverage. Every piece of information could be valuable. During one cell search, Emma discovered something that made her heart race: a phone, carefully hidden behind a loose board. It must have belonged to a previous captive. The battery was almost dead, but it still powered on. That night, when the compound was quietest, Emma tried to send a message. But the signal in the mountains was too weak, the screen showing a frustrating no-service icon. Still, she kept the phone hidden. Maybe, if they were moved to a different location, she'd get a signal. Vance's interrogations grew more frequent and more intense. He'd come to her cell at odd hours, trying to catch her off guard with questions about Ryan, about what she'd seen in the alley, about who else might know about their operation. "Your son's trained for this, isn't he?" Vance paced her small cell. "Gathering intelligence, planning strikes. Did he put you up to watching us?" "I told you, I haven't talked to Ryan in weeks." Emma kept her voice steady. "He's deployed overseas, but he's coming home now, isn't he?" Vance leaned close, his breath hot on her face. "Mother in danger. That's the kind of thing that brings a soldier running." Emma met his gaze without flinching. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're strong. I'll give you that." Vance straightened up. "Military family, I guess. But everyone breaks eventually. It's just a matter of finding the right pressure point." He nodded to one of his men, who brought in Sarah from the next cell. The girl was trembling, tears streaming down her face. Now, Vance pulled out a knife, running it gently along Sarah's cheek. "Let's try this again. What exactly did you see that night? And who did you tell?" Emma felt something inside her harden. "Leave her alone. She has nothing to do with this." "Everyone here has something to do with this. Your cooperation determines how they're treated." Vance pressed the knife harder, drawing a thin line of blood. "I saw you unloading crates." Emma burst out. "That's all. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared." "Please," Let her go. Vance studied her face for a long moment, then released Sarah with a push. Take her back to her cell. And Mrs. Carter? Remember this moment. Your choices have consequences for everyone here. After they left, Emma pressed her face into her thin mattress, allowing herself one moment of weakness. When she sat up again, her hand brushed against something sharp, a piece of metal that had worked loose from the bed frame during the interrogation. Carefully, she pried it free and slipped it into her sock. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. Later that night, as she was being led back from the bathroom, Emma caught a glimpse of something interesting, a heavy metal door, partially hidden behind storage shelves in the basement. One of the guards, a newer member named Miguel, saw her looking. Eyes forward, he growled, but there was something uncertain in his voice. The next day, during the brief exercise period they were allowed in a fenced outdoor area, Emma found herself near a dark-haired woman she'd seen being led to that basement door. I'm Emma, she whispered as they walked the perimeter. Maria, the woman replied just as quietly. Her accent was Spanish, but her English was good. You're the new one, yes? The mother? Emma nodded. That door in the basement. What's behind it? Maria glanced nervously at the guards before answering. A tunnel, from when this was a hunting lodge. They use it sometimes for moving special merchandise. But it's not safe. Parts have collapsed. But you've seen it? The whole tunnel. I cleaned it once when they first brought me here. It leads to an old mine shaft, then comes out near the road. But there are guards, cameras. Maria shook her head. Better not to think about it. There are always blind spots, Emma said softly. Always weaknesses if you know where to look. Maria studied her with new interest. You're different from the others. You watch, you plan. My son taught me that knowledge is power. The more we know, the better our chances. Your son, the soldier they talk about? Emma nodded slightly. Navy SEAL? Maria's eyes widened, then narrowed thoughtfully. Perhaps we should talk more about those blind spots. Over the next few days, Emma continued her careful observation of the compound's routines while subtly spreading information among the captives. She taught them to watch the guards' patterns, to notice when security was lightest, to memorize the layout of the building. Some, like Sarah, were too frightened to think about escape. Others, like Lucia, absorbed every detail with quiet intensity. Maria proved to be a valuable ally, her position as a cleaner giving her access to parts of the compound others never saw. During exercise periods, Emma would walk with different groups of women, offering encouragement and building their confidence. We're stronger together, she would tell them. When the moment comes, we need to be ready. She never explicitly mentioned escape plans. That would be too dangerous if someone broke under questioning. Instead, she focused on building their resilience, their awareness, their sense of unity. Late one night, as Emma lay on her mattress clutching the metal shard that was her only weapon, she heard Rocco arguing with another guard outside her cell. She's just a mother, Rocco was saying. This whole thing, it's gone too far. Vance says she's dangerous, the other guard replied. Says her son's some kind of elite soldier. And that doesn't tell you something? We used to be about freedom, about living outside society's rules. Now we're kidnapping mothers and selling children. What's next? Emma smiled grimly in the darkness. The cracks in the Iron Vultures' unity were growing. Rocco wasn't the only one questioning Vance's leadership. She'd heard other guards expressing similar doubts during their late-night conversations. Every piece of information, every connection made, every seed of doubt planted was another weapon in their arsenal. Emma thought of Ryan, wondering if he'd receive Lila's message, if he was already planning his approach. When he came, and she knew he would come, she wanted to make sure she and the other captives were ready. In her pocket, the hidden phone remained silent, waiting for a signal. In her sock, the metal shard pressed against her ankle, a constant reminder of her resolve. And in her mind, Emma Carter, waitress and mother, was building a resistance right under the Iron Vultures' noses. They thought they had captured a simple witness to silence. Instead, they had brought into their midst a woman who had raised a warrior, who had learned from him, and who was now using every lesson to undermine them from within. As Emma drifted off to sleep, she heard Maria's quiet voice through the wall, teaching Sarah a Spanish lullaby. The girl's trembling voice grew stronger as she learned the words, and Emma smiled. Sometimes hope was the most powerful weapon of all. The neon sign of the Thirsty Coyote bar cast a sickly green glow across the nearly empty parking lot. 3 motorcycles stood in a row near the entrance, their chrome dulled by road dust. Ryan Carter observed them from the shadows, noting the Iron Vultures emblem on the leather jackets draped over the seats. Low-level members, probably, the kind who hung around the edges of the gang's operations, useful for muscle, but not trusted with important details. Still, they might know something valuable. Ryan waited until one of the bikers stumbled out alone, heading for the alley to relieve himself. The man never saw what hit him. One moment he was fumbling with his zipper, the next he was pinned against the brick wall, a forearm pressed against his throat. The Iron Vultures mountain compound. Ryan's voice was barely above a whisper. "Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking." The man's protest cut off in a choke as Ryan increased the pressure. "Wrong answer. Let's try again." Ryan shifted his grip, using techniques he'd learned in advanced SEAL training. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but more than enough to cause serious discomfort. "The compound." "Now. I can't. They'll kill me if I talk." Ryan leaned closer, his voice deadly calm. "I'm not offering you a choice between talking and not talking. I'm offering you a choice between talking now or talking after I demonstrate what they taught me in BUD/S training about pain tolerance." 2 minutes later, Ryan had a rough location of a supply depot the gang used. The biker was left zip-tied behind the dumpster, a burner phone tucked into his pocket that would lead the police to find him, eventually. Over the next 3 days, similar scenes played out across Pine Grove. A gang member caught alone at a gas station. Another ambushed outside his girlfriend's apartment. 2 more intercepted on a beer run. Each encounter added pieces to Ryan's intelligence puzzle, and each terrified biker added to the growing legend of the shadow hunting the Iron Vultures. "It's got to be your kid," he overheard one gang member telling another at a local diner. "The waitress's son, the SEAL. Tommy swears he appeared out of nowhere, like some kind of ghost." "Tommy's an idiot," his companion scoffed, but his hands shook as he lifted his coffee cup. The breakthrough came when Ryan connected the gang's weapon shipments to City Councilman Robert Walsh. The evidence was subtle. Property records showing Walsh owned warehouses the gang used, carefully hidden money transfers, late-night meetings observed through high-powered optics. Ryan caught up with Walsh outside his country club, following him into the locker room. The councilman's smug confidence evaporated when he found himself suddenly alone with a man whose eyes held the cold focus of a predator. "Councilman," Ryan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's talk about your business arrangements with the Iron Vultures." "Do you know who I am?" Walsh blustered. "I'll have you arrested for..." "For what?" Ryan interrupted softly, asking questions about why a public servant is helping human traffickers operate in his town. Walsh went pale. "Human traffickers?" "No, they just move weapons. That's all I know about." "Really?" Ryan pulled out his phone, showing Walsh surveillance photos of himself meeting with Vance. "Because I have evidence suggesting you know a lot more. Evidence that would interest several federal agencies. You can't prove anything. Want to bet your career on that? Your freedom." Ryan stepped closer. "They have my mother, Walsh. Your friends took her, and you're going to help me get her back." 20 minutes later, Ryan had detailed information about the gang's supply routes, delivery schedules, and security protocols. Walsh had also provided names of corrupt officials who helped keep the Iron Vultures operating freely. "If anything happens to my mother," Ryan told the sweating councilman, "those files go to every law enforcement agency and news outlet in the state. Understand?" He was leaving the country club when a woman's voice called out from behind a parked car. "You're Emma Carter's son?" Ryan spun, hand moving instinctively toward his concealed weapon. A young woman emerged from the shadows, her hands raised to show she wasn't a threat. She was in her late 20s, with short dark hair and haunted eyes. "My name is Maya Reyes," she said. "I used to ride with the Vultures. I want to help." "Why?" "Because I know what they do to their captives. I was one, before they decided I was more useful as a member." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "I can help you find your mother." Ryan studied her carefully, looking for signs of deception. "If this is a trap..." "It's not. I can prove it." Maya pulled up her sleeve, revealing a brutal scar. "Vance's initiation ritual. He likes to mark his property. After a thorough background check and verification of her story, Ryan agreed to meet Maya at a safe house Jack had set up. She provided invaluable intelligence about the gang's internal dynamics. Vance is getting paranoid, she explained, sketching a rough layout of the compound. He thinks everyone's plotting against him. Rocco, his second in command, he's starting to question things. A lot of the younger members follow Rocco's lead. Tell me about the compound security, Ryan prompted, studying the sketch. 2 rings. Outer perimeter has cameras and motion sensors. Inner ring is manned 24/7, usually 4 guards per shift. But it's the inside you need to worry about. It's a maze. They designed it that way on purpose. And my mother? Where would they keep her? Maya pointed to a section of the drawing. Upper level, east wing. That's where they keep the high-value captives. The ones they think might be worth something. Ryan and Maya spent the next day observing one of the gang's outposts, a seemingly abandoned gas station that served as a waypoint for their operations. They watched from a concealed position as vehicles came and went, Maya identifying key members and explaining their roles. That's Tank, she whispered as a massive biker emerged from the station. Vance's chief enforcer. Ex-military but got kicked out for excessive force. Even the other members are scared of him. Weaknesses? Drinks heavily after sunset. Gets sloppy. Maya's voice hardened. Also likes to visit the captives when he's drunk. That's why I finally ran. Ryan's jaw tightened at the implication. We'll deal with him. Jack arrived that evening with additional supplies. Specialized breaching tools, communications equipment, and enough firepower to start a small war. You sure about this, brother? Jack asked as they inventoried the gear. Even with the intel your new friend provided, going in there is suicide. Let me call in some contractors I know. Good men, discreet. No time. Ryan checked the action on a suppressed rifle. Every day we wait is another day they have my mother. Maya, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. There's something else you need to know. About why I really left. Both men turned to look at her. In the dim light of the safe house, Maya seemed younger, more vulnerable. I was 17 when they took me, she began. Runaway. Easy target. Vance, he has a system. Breaks you down, builds you back up the way he wants. Makes you think the gang is your only family. She pulled out a worn photograph, a young girl with a bright smile. This was my sister, Angela. She followed me to Pine Grove, trying to bring me home. Vance found out. Thought she might talk to the police. Maya's voice cracked. They made me watch what they did to her. Said it was my fault for bringing her into this. Ryan sat beside her, his tactical mindset warring with basic human compassion. Is that when you left? Maya nodded. Took me 3 months to work up the courage. Been hiding ever since, watching them, gathering information, waiting for a chance to bring them down. She looked up at Ryan, her eyes hard. Your mother, she's strong. I've heard how she fights back, gives the other captives hope. But Vance won't tolerate that forever. We move tomorrow, Ryan decided. Jack, I need you on Overwatch here. He pointed to a ridge overlooking the compound. Maya knows the interior layout. She'll guide me through the radio. And after? Jack asked. Once you get your mother out? We burn it all down, Maya said quietly. The compound, the evidence, everything they've built. Make sure they can never hurt anyone else. They spent the next hours finalizing the plan. Ryan memorized the compound's layout, the guard rotations, every detail Maya could provide. Jack cleaned and checked weapons while Maya marked potential escape routes on their maps. The tunnel, she mentioned as midnight approached. The old mining tunnel under the compound. They use it sometimes for moving special shipments. Might be a good backup exit. You didn't mention this before, Ryan noted carefully. Because it's dangerous. Parts have collapsed, and they keep it guarded. But if everything goes wrong, she shrugged. Better than no escape at all. Ryan studied the tunnel's route on the map, adding it to his mental layout of the compound. Like any SEAL operation, he needed multiple contingency plans. If things went bad in the main building, show me exactly where the tunnel entrances are, he said. As Maya pointed out the locations, Ryan thought about his mother, imagining her alone in that compound. But he knew Emma Carter, knew her strength, her resourcefulness. She wouldn't be just sitting there waiting for rescue. She'd be planning, observing, maybe even preparing the other captives. Tomorrow, he said finally, checking his watch. We go in at dawn, when their night shift is most tired and the day shift isn't fully alert. They'll be expecting something, Jack warned. Word's gotten around about what you've been doing to their people in town. Good. Ryan began gathering his gear. Let them be afraid. Let them wonder when and where I'll strike. Fear makes people sloppy. Maya watched him check his weapons with practiced efficiency. You're really going to take on the whole compound? Even knowing what they're capable of? Ryan paused, thinking of the photograph Emma kept by her bed. Their whole family at his SEAL graduation. Her pride, her love, her unwavering support through every challenge he'd faced. They took my mother, he said simply. There's nothing they can do to stop me from getting her back. In the pre-dawn hours, Ryan made his final preparations. Each piece of gear was checked and rechecked. Spare magazines were distributed for easy access. Communications were tested and backup frequencies confirmed. Jack would provide overwatch from the ridge, his sniper rifle ready to cover the approaches. Maya would guide Ryan through the compound's layout from a secure location nearby, monitoring guard movements through the knowledge only a former insider could provide. As the sky began to lighten in the east, Ryan looked at the compound through his tactical scope one last time. Somewhere in there, his mother was waiting. He thought of all she taught him about courage, about never giving up, about protecting family at all costs. I'm coming, Mom, he whispered. Hold on just a little longer. The hunt was about to become a rescue, and the Iron Vultures were about to learn why you never come between a Navy SEAL and his family. The moonless night wrapped around Ryan Carter like a familiar friend as he approached the Iron Vultures outpost. Located in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Pine Grove, it served as a staging area for their operations, and, according to Maya's intelligence, a temporary holding facility for captives before they were moved to the main compound. 3 guards on the perimeter, Maya's voice whispered through his earpiece. 2 more inside, plus the supervisor. Ryan checked his suppressed .23 Malawian Quach's pistol one last time. Any captives tonight? At least 4, based on the vehicle movements I observed earlier. They're usually held in the office area on the east side. From his position in the shadows, Ryan could see the guards' patrol pattern. Lazy, overconfident. They'd grown too comfortable, too sure of their own invulnerability. That would be their first mistake. The first guard went down without a sound, a precise chokehold rendering him unconscious in seconds. Ryan zip-tied his hands and feet, then moved on to his next target. The second guard had just enough time to realize something was wrong before darkness claimed him. The third guard was more alert, managing to reach for his radio before Ryan's hand clamped over his mouth. A brief struggle ended with another unconscious body, carefully hidden from immediate view. Perimeter clear, Ryan whispered into his comm, moving to Phase 2. The warehouse's security system was professional grade, but poorly maintained, another sign of the gang's overconfidence. Ryan bypassed it with tools and techniques learned from years of special operations, sliding through a side entrance like a ghost. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the lingering smell of fear. Ryan moved silently through the shadows, his night vision goggles turning the darkness into shades of green. The 2 interior guards were playing cards at a folding table, their weapons propped carelessly against their chairs. They never saw what hit them. The supervisor proved more challenging. A former military man himself, he managed to sense something was wrong just before Ryan struck. He reached for his gun, but years of SEAL training proved superior to whatever experience he had. The fight was brief, brutal, and decisive. With the immediate threats neutralized, Ryan moved toward the office area. The sound of muffled sobbing led him to a locked door. The lock lasted 3 seconds against his picks. Inside, 4 women huddled together in the corner. Their eyes widened with fear at his appearance, but Ryan quickly pulled off his tactical mask. I'm here to help, he said softly, showing them his hands. My name is Ryan Carter. I'm looking for my mother, Emma Carter. She was taken by the Iron Vultures. One of the women, a blonde in her early 20s, spoke up. Emma? They took her to the mountain compound. Everyone talks about her. The mother who fights back. Pride swelled in Ryan's chest. Of course his mother would be causing trouble for her captors. Is she okay? He asked as he quickly cut through their restraints. Last we heard, another woman said, rubbing her wrists. They keep her isolated because she gives the other captives hope. But Vance, he's getting angry about it. Ryan's jaw tightened at the mention of the gang leader's name. Tell me everything you know about the compound. As he led them to safety, the women shared valuable intelligence, guard patterns, facility layout, which members could be trusted and which were the most dangerous. One of them, a former nurse named Patricia, had spent time in the compound's medical room and knew its layout intimately. Your mother, Patricia said as they reached the safe vehicles Ryan had staged nearby. She's different. She watches everything, remembers everything. The guards, they're scared of her, in a way. Not physically, but she sees through them. Another woman, Karen added, sees their weaknesses. Some of them can't even look her in the eye anymore. Before leaving the warehouse, Ryan took out a can of spray paint. In large, blood-red letters, he wrote on the main wall, "You're next. Let them wonder. Let them fear." Every minute they spent looking over their shoulders was a minute they weren't watching his mother. Miles away, in the mountain compound, Emma Carter sat silently in her cell, listening to the chaos unfolding in the main room. A phone call had sent the gang into an uproar. All of them, Vance's voice thundered. How the hell did one man take out 6 trained fighters? They never saw him coming, someone replied. Like a fucking ghost. Left a message too. You're next. Emma's heart soared. Ryan. It had to be Ryan. It's her boy. Tank's gravelly voice cut through the commotion. The seal. It had to be. Double the guards, Vance ordered. Triple them. I want motion sensors, cameras, everything, and set up ambush points here, here, and here. He'll come for her. We'll be ready. Emma used the distraction to her advantage. As guards rushed past her cell, she noticed one of them had a folded paper sticking out of his back pocket, some kind of map or diagram. When he stopped to adjust his rifle, she reached through the cell bars with the piece of metal she'd been hiding, carefully fishing the paper out. Success. She pulled it through the bars just as he moved away, none the wiser. Back at the safe house, Ryan debriefed with Maya and Jack while the rescued women were taken to a secure location by trusted contacts. He'll be expecting you now, Maya warned, pacing nervously. Vance, he's not like other gang leaders. When some of his lieutenants questioned him last year, he invited them on a special run. Their bikes were found at the bottom of Morgan's Cliff. No bodies were ever recovered. Tell me more about his psychology, Ryan said, studying the compound diagrams they created from various intelligence sources. He's a true sociopath, Maya explained. Charming when he needs to be, brutal when it suits him. He rose to power by eliminating anyone who showed the slightest disloyalty. The year before I joined, he discovered one of his men was skimming money. Instead of just killing him, he locked the guy's entire family in their house and burned it down. Said it would serve as a lesson. Ryan absorbed this information, adding it to his tactical planning. Predictable patterns? He's paranoid about betrayal. Trusts his security systems more than his men. But he's also arrogant. Thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That's why your mother bothers him so much. She sees through his act. In her cell, Emma studied the stolen map by the dim light filtering through the boards. It showed the compound's layout, including several features she hadn't known about. Ventilation shafts, electrical panels, and most importantly, guard positions. She memorized every detail before carefully sharing key information with her fellow captives during their brief exercise period. Maria proved especially valuable, using her cleaning duties to pass messages between different sections of the compound. The guards are nervous, Maria whispered during one such exchange. They say a ghost is hunting them in town. A soldier. My son, Emma replied quietly, feeling a fierce pride. When he comes, and he will come, we need to be ready to move. Word spread quietly among the captives. Hope, which had been a dim ember, began to glow brighter. They began watching the guards more carefully, noting their patterns, their weaknesses. Ryan spent the next day analyzing the intelligence gathered from the rescued women, combining it with Maya's insider knowledge and his own tactical expertise. The compound security was formidable, but not impenetrable. The perimeter sensors are their pride and joy, Maya pointed out on their detailed diagram. But the backup power system is vulnerable. One well-placed charge here, she indicated a spot on the map, and half their security system goes dark. What about response times? Ryan asked, thinking through scenarios. 4 minutes from alarm to full deployment. But Maya's eyes glinted. There's a shift change at 0400. For about 30 seconds. The north sector has minimal coverage while they swap out. Ryan noted these details, building a comprehensive plan of attack. The compound's strengths would become its weaknesses. Their reliance on technology would be their downfall. They'll be expecting a direct assault, Jack commented from where he was cleaning his rifle. After that message you left them. Good, Ryan replied. Let them focus on the obvious threats. They'll never see the real attack coming. Meanwhile, Emma had begun coordinating with the other captives, using their brief interaction times to build a network of resistance. Sarah, the young runaway, proved to have a photographic memory, helping them create detailed mental maps of guard rotations. Lucia, who spoke little English but understood machinery, had noticed patterns in the security system's maintenance schedule. During one exercise period, Emma managed to pass crucial information to Maria about the ventilation system shown on the map. The cleaning woman's eyes widened slightly. She cleaned those vents regularly and knew exactly what Emma was suggesting. It's too dangerous, Maria whispered. If we're caught, more dangerous than staying here. Emma countered softly, waiting for them to ship us off to God knows where. As if to emphasize her point, they overheard two guards discussing the latest shipment scheduled for the following week. Maria's resolve hardened. Tell me what you need me to do, she whispered. Back in town, Ryan was making final preparations for his full assault on the compound. The rescued women had provided invaluable intelligence about the facility's interior layout, including details about his mother's likely location. The East Wing, second floor, Patricia had told him. They keep the high-value captives there. But be careful. It's the most heavily guarded section. Maya continued to provide crucial insights into Vance's psychology and likely reactions. He'll have traps set, she warned. But he's also predictable in his paranoia. He'll focus on protecting himself first, his operation second. The captives are just leverage to him. Ryan absorbed every detail, every nuance. In his mind, the compound was becoming a three-dimensional maze of opportunities and threats. Each security measure had its weakness, each defensive position its blind spot. We go in quiet, he told his small team. They'll be expecting a frontal assault after the warehouse. Instead, we'll bleed them slowly. Take out their eyes first, then their ears. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. Jack checked his ammunition one last time. Just say when, brother. Dawn, Ryan decided. When the night shift is tired and the day shift isn't fully alert. Maya, you'll coordinate from here, guiding us through any changes in their routine. Jack, I need you on this ridge with your rifle. Anyone tries to escape with a hostage, they don't get far. As night fell over the mountain compound, both sides made their preparations. Vance posted extra guards and checked his security systems, confident in his defenses. Emma and her fellow captives gathered their courage and memorized their roles in the coming chaos. And Ryan Carter, Navy SEAL and devoted son, cleaned his weapons and went over his assault plan one final time. Tomorrow, the Iron Vultures would learn the difference between being hunters and being hunted. Tomorrow, they would discover why Navy SEALs were considered the world's elite warriors. Tomorrow, Ryan Carter would bring his mother home. The first assault had been a message. The next would be a reckoning. The supply truck rumbled up the mountain road, its suspension groaning against the rough terrain. Behind the wheel, Ryan Carter adjusted his borrowed delivery uniform, feeling the familiar weight of his concealed weapons. Maya's intelligence had been perfect. Every Tuesday at 0900, Mountain Valley Supplies made their regular delivery to the Iron Vultures compound. The real delivery driver was safely sleeping off a doctored cup of coffee at a rest stop, while his truck had given Ryan the perfect cover for infiltration. In the passenger seat, a clipboard held legitimate-looking delivery papers, each detail carefully forged to withstand scrutiny. Checkpoint ahead, Maya's voice crackled through his hidden earpiece. 2 guards. Standard procedure is to check papers and cargo. Ryan kept his expression neutral as he pulled up to the gate. A burly guard with a shotgun approached the driver's side while his partner circled the truck with a mirror on a pole, checking for hidden threats underneath. You're not Pete, the guard said suspiciously, studying Ryan's face. Pete's got the flu, Ryan replied easily, holding out the clipboard. I'm covering his route today. Got 3 pallets of supplies, and that special order from Mr. Vance. The mention of the special order, a detail Maya had provided, made the guard relax slightly. He checked the paperwork, comparing it to something on his tablet. All right, looks good. Back it up to loading dock 3. The gates creaked open, and Ryan drove through, his trained eyes scanning the compound's defenses. Camera coverage was extensive, but had blind spots, typical of systems installed by overconfident amateurs. Armed guards patrolled in pairs, their routes predictable to anyone with military experience. At the loading dock, 2 guards waited to help with the unloading. Ryan backed the truck up with practiced ease, noting their weapons' positions and remembering Maya's description of their capabilities. These would be low-level members, not the experienced fighters who handle compound security. Need a hand? One of them asked as Ryan hopped down from the cab. Yeah, thanks. Got some heavy stuff in the back. The moment they entered the trailer, Ryan moved. The first guard went down silently, a precise strike to the vagus nerve rendering him unconscious. The second had just enough time to register surprise before meeting the same fate. Working quickly, Ryan zip-tied and gagged them, then concealed their bodies beneath empty pallets at the back of the trailer. He retrieved 2 small packs from a hidden compartment in the truck's frame, one containing explosives, the other holding additional weapons and tactical gear. The loading dock connected to a main storage area, which matched the layout Maya had described. Ryan moved through it like a ghost, years of SEAL training evident in every silent step. A security camera swept back and forth, but its predictable pattern left a 3-second blind spot, more than enough time for him to slip past. The first floor was primarily storage and common areas. The captives would be kept on the second floor, with Emma likely in the east wing where they held high-value prisoners. Ryan needed to make his way up without being spotted. He found his opportunity when a maintenance worker left a utility closet unlocked. Inside, a maintenance shaft provided access to the upper floor. Tight squeeze, but manageable. As he climbed, Ryan could hear voices through the thin walls. Guards complaining about doubled shifts, someone taking lunch orders, the mundane sounds of people unaware that death was climbing toward them. On the second floor, Ryan emerged into a quieter hallway. Cells lined both sides, their doors solid except for small observation windows. He moved silently, checking each window, looking for his mother. Through one of the windows, Emma Carter sat on a thin mattress, her back straight, her expression alert despite her captivity. Even in these conditions, she maintained the dignity and strength that had shaped Ryan's character. A small crack in her door's frame gave her a limited view of the hallway. Their eyes met through the crack. Emma's widened slightly, the only indication she gave of recognizing her son. She touched her finger to her lips, then gestured subtly toward the end of the hall. 2 guards, Ryan realized, just around the corner. He nodded imperceptibly and moved on, maintaining his cover. First, he needed to map the entire floor, understand all his options. Through other cell windows, he saw more captives, women of various ages, some bearing signs of abuse, all showing fear. This was bigger than just rescuing his mother. These people needed help too. Suddenly, commotion erupted from downstairs. Ryan pressed himself into a shadowy alcove as boots thundered up the stairs. Vance wants everyone in the main room, a voice called out. The Carson Street outpost just got hit. Ryan smiled grimly. Right on schedule. Jack's diversionary attack on their secondary location would draw attention and pull resources away from the compound. From his hiding spot, Ryan could hear Vance's reaction to the news. How many men did we lose? The gang leader's voice carried clearly. None, sir. They were all tied up, left alive. But the message? What message? Coming for you next, painted in red, just like at the warehouse. Vance's response was explosive. He's playing with us, trying to get in our heads, double the patrols, activate all the security measures. I want motion sensors, infrared, everything. He's not getting in here. Sir, another voice, Rocco's, Ryan recognized from Maya's descriptions, spoke up. Maybe we should consider negotiating. Returned the woman. End this before. Before what? Vance's voice turned dangerous. Before her soldier boy causes more trouble? We look weak once we're finished. Every rival gang, every potential enemy will think they can push us around. This isn't about looking weak. Rocco shot back. This is about survival. You've seen what he can do. One man took out 2 of our outposts without killing anyone. Imagine what he'll do when he stops playing nice. Ryan used their argument as cover to move, planting small explosive charges at key structural points Maya had identified. Nothing lethal, just enough to create chaos and confusion when needed. Each charge was carefully concealed, its remote detonator synchronized to his control unit. Back in her cell, Emma watched through the crack as her son worked. Pride swelled in her chest. Every movement precise, professional, lethal. This wasn't the boy she'd raised anymore. This was the warrior he'd become. She needed to do her part. During exercise period, she managed to pass the stolen map to Maria, along with whispered instructions. If anything happens to me, Emma murmured as they walked the yard, make sure everyone knows the escape routes. When the chaos starts, head for the tunnel entrance behind the storage room. We'll all get out, Maria promised. Your son, he's the one they fear, yes? The ghost who hunts them. Emma allowed herself a small smile. He's more than they can imagine. Inside, the argument between Vance and Rocco had escalated. You're losing control, Rocco shouted, his face red with anger. These women, these girls, this isn't what the Iron Vultures stand for. We're supposed to be outlaws, not monsters. We're whatever I say we are. Vance grabbed Rocco by the front of his jacket. I built this organization from nothing. Every dollar we have, every scrap of respect we've earned, came from my leadership. Your leadership? Rocco laughed bitterly. You mean your paranoia? Your cruelty? The men talk, Vance. They're scared. Not of this seal, but of you. How long before you decide one of us is a threat? How many more accidents before? The sound of Vance's punch echoed through the compound. Rocco stumbled back, blood trickling from his split lip. Get out of my sight, Vance snarled. And remember, there's only one way to leave the Iron Vultures. As Rocco stormed off, Ryan made his move. The shift change created a brief gap in coverage. 30 seconds where the guards' overlapping fields of view were compromised. He slipped through shadows, using every trick he'd learned in years of special operations. A guard turned the corner unexpectedly. Ryan froze, becoming one with the darkness. The guard's eyes swept past him, seeing nothing but shadows. These men were used to looking for obvious threats. They didn't know how to spot someone trained in the art of invisibility. Finally, Ryan made his way back to Emma's cell. He needed to make contact, coordinate their escape. The lock was heavy but simple, designed to keep people in, not train operators out. Mom, he whispered through the crack. Stay calm and listen carefully. Emma moved closer to the door, her voice barely audible. Ryan, I knew you'd come. I'm getting you out of here. All of you. But we need perfect timing. There are other captives, Emma began. I know. I've seen them. We'll get them all out, I promise. But first, boots on the stairs interrupted them. Ryan melted back into the shadows as a guard patrol passed. Reinforcements are coming, he whispered once they were gone. Vance called in every member within 100 miles. We need to move before they arrive. The tunnel, Emma breathed. Under the storage room. Maria knows the way. Already mapped it. It'll be our backup exit. I've planted charges throughout the compound. When they blow, head for the main entrance. I'll clear the path. Be careful, baby. Vance, he's not just cruel, he's smart. He'll have tricks ready. Ryan smiled in the darkness. So do I. When you hear the explosions, be ready to move. And Mom? Yes. I'm proud of you. The other captives, the way you've helped them stay strong. That's the mother I know. Emma felt tears threatening, but forced them back. This wasn't the time for emotion. Just remember your promise, we all get out. Or none of us do. All of us, Ryan confirmed. I'll be back in 1 hour. When everything starts, stay low and move fast. He melted away just as another guard patrol approached. Emma returned to her mattress, her heart racing, but her mind clear. Her boy had grown into exactly the kind of man she'd always hoped he'd be. Strong, skilled, but still caring about others. Through the walls, she could hear Vance barking orders, his paranoia growing with each passing minute. More guards were posted, patrols increased, but Emma knew it wouldn't matter. They were trying to stop a ghost, a shadow trained by the best military force in the world. And soon, very soon, The Iron Vultures would learn why you never, ever take a Navy SEAL's mother. The night air was thick with tension as Ryan Carter checked his watch one final time. 0200 hours. The perfect moment when human alertness was at its lowest. In his ear, Maya's voice provided a final update. Guards are in position exactly as expected. Security cameras on normal rotation. No signs they've detected you. Ryan's finger hovered over the detonator. Jack, you in position? Ready on overwatch. Jack's voice came through clearly. I've got eyes on all escape routes. Ryan took a deep breath, channeling years of SEAL training into this crucial moment. Going hot in 3, 2, 1. The first explosion rocked the compound's west wing, immediately followed by 2 more in rapid succession. The carefully placed charges created a symphony of destruction, each blast calculated to cause maximum chaos with minimal structural damage. Alarms blared as confused shouts filled the air. Guards abandoned their posts, rushing toward the explosions exactly as Ryan had predicted. In their haste to respond to the obvious threat, they left gaps in their security, gaps a trained operator could exploit. Move now, Maya urged. You've got 90 seconds before they realize it's a diversion. Ryan was already moving, his motions fluid and precise. The lock on Emma's cell door yielded to his specialized tools in seconds. She was ready, standing alert as he entered. Right on time, she said with a proud smile. Mom, we need to, Ryan started, but Emma was already moving past him to the next cell. Sarah's in here, she explained, then Maria and Lucia 2 doors down. There are 14 others spread across this floor. We need to get them all. Ryan quickly adapted his plan, impressed by his mother's command of the situation. Together, they moved from cell to cell, freeing the captives while the chaos of the explosions continued to draw attention elsewhere. Listen carefully, Emma addressed the gathered women, her voice quiet but firm. We move in groups of 4. Stay close, stay quiet. Maria knows the way to the tunnel entrance. If anything happens to me, she leads. The women's eyes showed fear, but there was determination there too. Emma had clearly been preparing them for this moment. Ryan noticed how they organized themselves efficiently, the stronger ones automatically moving to help those who seemed weaker. Mom, you've been busy, he whispered as they started moving. Had to give them hope, she replied simply. Had to make them ready. They encountered their first obstacle at the end of the cell block. 2 guards were returning to their posts, weapons raised. But before Ryan could act, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Stand down, Rocco ordered the guards. Sir? But the prisoners. I said stand down. Rocco's voice carried an edge of steel. Go check the West Wing. Now. The guards hesitated, then hurried away. Rocco turned to Ryan and Emma. The tunnel entrance is clear, he said quickly. But hurry. Vance will figure it out soon. Why are you helping us? Ryan asked, though he kept his weapon trained on Rocco. Because this isn't what we were supposed to be. Rocco's face showed years of accumulated guilt. Get them out. End this. They had no time for further discussion. Already, new shouts were rising above the chaos. Shouts of discovery and alarm. The prisoners. Check the cells. Vance's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Kill anyone trying to leave? No witnesses. The group moved faster, Emma and Maria leading them toward the storage area, while Ryan covered their rear. They made it down 1 flight of stairs before encountering serious resistance. Tank, Vance's massive enforcer, came charging around a corner. Ryan met him head-on, knowing he couldn't let the brute near the captives. The fight was brutal and fast. Tank had size and raw power, but Ryan had training and technique. They crashed through a door, trading vicious blows. Tank managed to get his hands around Ryan's throat, but years of combat training kicked in. Ryan used his attacker's momentum against him, turning Tank's strength into a weakness. A precise strike to the throat, followed by a devastating knee to the solar plexus, and Tank went down hard. Ryan quickly secured Tank's weapon, a modified automatic pistol, and caught up with the group. Emma had led them to the storage room, where Maria was already working to open the hidden entrance to the tunnel. It stuck, Maria grunted, pushing against the heavy panel. Ryan and 2 of the stronger captives helped her push. The panel finally gave way with a grinding sound, revealing a dark passage. But as they shone lights into it, their hearts sank. The collapse, Maria whispered. It's worse than before. The tunnel had partially caved in about 30 feet in. They might be able to climb through, but it would be slow and dangerous, and they could hear more guards approaching. New plan, Emma said decisively. The loading dock. Right? He nodded, already calculating. Through the kitchen, then east corridor. Jack, you copy? Got you covered at the loading dock, Jack confirmed through the radio. But you've got multiple tangos converging on your position. Ryan took point as they changed direction, leading them through the compound's maze-like interior. Every corner could hide a threat, but he moved with the confidence of someone who had memorized every detail of the building's layout. They encountered 2 more guards in the kitchen. Ryan dealt with them efficiently, using their own surprise against them. His movements were economical, precise, no wasted energy, no unnecessary force. Just the calculated violence of a highly trained operator. Stop, he heard Emma hiss to the group. She'd spotted another guard patrol through a window, about to cross their path. They pressed themselves against walls, in the shadows, holding their breath as boots thumped past their position. Ryan was impressed by how quietly the women moved, how well they followed Emma's signals. His mother had done more than give them hope. She'd trained them, prepared them for exactly this situation. They were almost to the loading dock when everything went wrong. A guard they hadn't spotted triggered an alarm, and suddenly the air was filled with shouts and running feet. There, the loading dock. The group found themselves cornered, caught between approaching guards and the closed loading dock door. Ryan moved to engage the first wave of attackers, but there were too many. This was it. They were trapped. Then Rocco's voice rang out again. They're heading for the main gate. All units respond. The guards hesitated, looking between Rocco and their actual targets. Move, you idiots! Rocco shouted. They're getting away. As the guards rushed toward the main gate, Rocco quickly opened the loading dock door. Go! Now! The group didn't need to be told twice. They moved quickly but carefully into the night air, staying low and using the vehicles for cover. Ryan brought up the rear, his stolen pistol covering their escape. Jack status, he whispered. Clear shot on any pursuers, Jack replied from his sniper position. Maya's got vehicles waiting at the rendezvous point. They made it about 50 yards from the compound when the first shouts of discovery rose behind them. Ryan had prepared for this. From his tactical vest, he pulled several small devices, non-lethal traps designed to slow pursuit. Keep moving, he told the group. Don't stop for anything. Working quickly, he set up his surprises. Tripwires connected to flashbang grenades. Caltrips to shred vehicle tires. Remote-activated smoke charges to obscure vision. Each trap was placed with precision, creating a gauntlet that would make pursuit extremely difficult. The sound of motorcycles starting up spurred the group to move faster. They pushed into the tree line, where the darkness would provide better cover. Emma kept them together, her quiet authority preventing panic from setting in. Steady, she encouraged them. We trained for this, just like we practiced. Ryan caught up with them just as the first trap was triggered. A brilliant flash and deafening bang lit up the night behind them, followed by shouts of confusion and pain. More traps activated in sequence, creating chaos among their pursuers. Through here, Maria pointed to a barely visible trail. It leads to the old fire road. They could hear cursing and confusion behind them as more pursuers encountered Ryan's obstacles. The sounds grew fainter as they moved deeper into the forest, following Maria's lead while Ryan continued to guard their rear. Emma dropped back to walk beside her son. Those men you've been taking down, you haven't killed any of them. Didn't need to, Ryan replied, still scanning for threats. Dead bodies create investigations. We want them scared, not martyred. A smile touched Emma's lips. Even in combat, her son thought strategically. You've grown up well, she said softly. Had a good teacher, he replied, then tensed as branches cracked behind them. But it was just a deer, startled by their passage. The group moved steadily through the darkness, their way lit only by the moon filtering through the trees. The women helped each other over fallen logs and across small streams, their bonds forged in captivity, now strengthening their escape. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew more distant and disorganized. Ryan's traps had done their job, breaking up the gang's coordination and sapping their confidence. In the darkness, every shadow might hide another trap. Every step might trigger another surprise. 5 minutes to the vehicles. Maya's voice came through Ryan's earpiece. No signs of pursuit on the road. They emerged from the trees onto the old fire road, just as dawn was beginning to lighten the eastern sky. 3 unmarked vans waited, their drivers alert and ready. The women quickly loaded up, helping the weaker ones aboard. Head for the safe house, Ryan instructed the drivers. Trusted contacts arranged through Maya's network. No stops, no detours. We'll follow once we're sure there's no pursuit. As the vans pulled away, Ryan turned to survey the path they'd come. In the growing light, he could see smoke rising from where some of his traps had detonated. No pursuers were visible, but he knew Vance wouldn't give up easily. "It's not over," Emma said, reading his thoughts. "No," Ryan agreed. "But Phase 1 is complete. The captives are safe." Emma touched his arm. "Thank you. Not just for saving me, but for helping all of them. Like I said, had a good teacher." Ryan checked his weapon, then spoke into his radio. "Jack, Maya, Phase 2 is a go. Time to end the Iron Vultures once and for all." As they moved to their own vehicle, Ryan glanced at his mother. She'd survived captivity, organized resistance, and led an escape, all while maintaining her humanity and helping others. He might be a Navy SEAL, but Emma Carter had shown herself to be every bit as much a warrior as her son. The sun rose over the mountains, marking the end of one battle and the beginning of another. The Iron Vultures had lost their captives, but they still had to answer for their crimes. Ryan Carter had freed his mother, but his mission wasn't complete. The next phase would be about justice, about making sure the Iron Vultures could never hurt anyone again. As they drove away from the compound, both mother and son knew that the real war was just beginning. The forest grew darker as storm clouds gathered overhead, perfect cover for what was about to unfold. Ryan Carter heard the motorcycles before he saw them, multiple engines growling through the trees, growing closer. Through his tactical scope, he counted at least 15 bikes, with Vance's distinctive chopper leading the pack. "Maya, status on the evacuation?" he whispered into his radio. "First 2 vans are clear," she replied. "Third one's 10 minutes out from the safe house." A branch snapped nearby. Ryan turned to see his mother approaching, moving as quietly as he'd taught her. The remaining captives huddled behind her, their eyes wide but determined. "They're coming," Emma said softly. "We can hear them." Thunder rolled overhead as Ryan made his decision. "Mom, take them north through Miller's Ravine. It's rough terrain, bikes can't follow. Jack's positioned to cover your exit." "I'm not leaving you here alone," Emma protested. "You're not." Ryan checked his weapons one final time. "You're completing the mission. Those women need you to lead them to safety." Emma recognized the tone in her son's voice. The same quiet determination she'd heard when he first announced he wanted to become a SEAL. She pulled him into a fierce hug. "Come back to us," she whispered. "Always do," he replied with a slight smile. "Now go. Don't stop for anything." As Emma led the group away, Ryan's radio crackled to life. Vance's voice filled his ear, dripping with malice. "I see you found my little hideaway, soldier boy. Quite the rescue operation. But did you really think I'd let you just walk away?" Ryan didn't respond, already moving to his first prepared position. He'd chosen this spot carefully: dense forest, uneven ground, plenty of cover. Perfect for the kind of warfare he'd been trained in. "Silent treatment, huh?" Vance continued. "That's okay. We can talk about your sister instead. Lila, right? Pretty girl. Goes to Pine Grove High. Takes dance classes on Thursdays." Ryan's jaw tightened, but he maintained his discipline. Vance was trying to get in his head, make him sloppy. Instead, Ryan used the voice transmission to triangulate Vance's position. The first gang member went down silently, a precise strike to the base of the skull. Ryan dragged the unconscious body into the underbrush, acquiring the man's radio in the process. Now he could hear their tactical communications. "Spread out," Vance was ordering. "He's here somewhere." Ryan moved like a ghost through the forest, using every trick he'd learned in SEAL training. A flash of lightning illuminated the trees, and in that brief moment, he took out 2 more gang members. By the time the thunder rolled, he was gone again. "What the hell is happening?" someone shouted over the radio. "Martinez? Rodriguez?" Someone respond. He's hunting us, another voice said, fear evident in their tone. Rain began to fall, heavy drops drumming against the leaves. Ryan used the noise as cover, moving closer to where he'd last seen Vance. Through the trees, he could see the gang leader growing increasingly agitated as more of his men went silent. Come out and face me, Vance shouted into the darkness. Or are Navy SEALs only brave when they're sneaking around? Sir, a gang member rushed up to Vance. We've lost contact with the eastern sector. 6 men down. Keep searching. Vance grabbed the man's jacket. He's one man. One man can't. He's not alone. Rocco's voice cut through the rain as he emerged from the shadows, his gun trained on Vance. And neither are you. Vance's eyes narrowed. Should have known you'd turn traitor. The only traitor here is you. Rocco's voice shook with anger. You betrayed everything we stood for. We were supposed to be outlaws, not monsters. Trafficking women? Children? What happened to you, Vincent? The use of Vance's real name made the gang leader flinch. I built this organization from nothing. You build it on blood and fear, Rocco countered. And I'm done being part of it. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the tableau. Vance and Rocco facing each other, remaining gang members looking uncertainly between them. In that moment of brilliant light, Ryan saw his opportunity. But Vance moved first. His hand was a blur as he drew his pistol, putting 2 rounds into Rocco's chest before anyone could react. The former second-in-command fell backward, a look of surprise frozen on his face. Anyone else feel like sharing their opinions? Vance asked the shocked gang members. The response came in the form of retreating footsteps. One by one, then in groups, the remaining Iron Vultures melted away into the rain-soaked forest. They'd followed Vance out of fear and greed, but watching him murder Rocco in cold blood had broken whatever loyalty remained. Cowards! Vance screamed after them. I'll hunt down every last one of you. Like you hunted my mother? Ryan's voice came from behind him. Vance spun, firing blindly into the darkness, but Ryan was already moving. The gang leader's shots echoed through the trees, answered only by thunder. Your mother? Vance laughed, trying to mask his growing fear. She was just business. A loose end to tie up. But I have to admit, she surprised me. Strong woman. Kept giving the other girls hope, no matter what we did. That's who she is. Ryan's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. She taught me that strength isn't about violence or fear. It's about protecting others, standing up for what's right. Beautiful sentiment. Vance sneered, still turning, trying to locate the voice. Let's see how it holds up against lead. He fired again, but Ryan was done playing cat and mouse. He emerged from the shadows like an avenging spirit, his movements precise and lethal. Vance managed to get off 2 more shots before Ryan closed the distance. The fight was brutal and personal. Vance was no amateur. He clearly had military or police training at some point. But Ryan had been forged in the crucible of SEAL training, hardened by countless combat operations. They crashed through the underbrush, trading devastating blows. Vance fought with the desperate fury of a man who knew he had nothing left to lose. He landed a lucky strike that opened a gash above Ryan's eye, but the SEAL barely seemed to notice the blood running down his face. I'll find them again, Vance gasped as they grappled. Your mother, your sister. Make them wish they'd never heard of the Iron Vultures. Ryan's response was coldly professional. He broke Vance's grip using a technique learned in close-quarters combat training, then followed up with a devastating combination of strikes. The gang leader staggered, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine fear as he realized he was outmatched. A final exchange ended with Vance on his knees, arm broken, looking up at Ryan through the rain. Do it, he spat. Finish it. No, Ryan said quietly. You don't get to die a warrior's death. In the distance, sirens began to wail. The local police, who had been too afraid to move against the Iron Vultures for so long, had finally found their courage. Ryan could hear multiple vehicles approaching through the forest. Maya, he spoke in his radio. Status? All vans secured at the safe house, she replied. Emma and the others are safe. Police are moving in from all directions. Anonymous tip led them to evidence of the trafficking operation. Copy that. Ryan zip-tied Vance's hands behind his back, ignoring the gang leader's stream of threats and curses. Jack, you got eyes on any runners? Negative. Jack reported from his sniper position. They scattered like rats from a sinking ship after Rocco went down. Red and blue lights began to flash through the trees as police vehicles arrived. Sheriff Bradley led the response team himself, his earlier cowardice replaced by determination now that the Iron Vultures' power was broken. Ryan Carter? Bradley called out. Federal authorities are en route. We've found the compound, the evidence, everything. He's all yours, Sheriff, Ryan said, hauling Vance to his feet, along with enough evidence to put him away for several lifetimes. As police officers moved in to secure Vance, Ryan caught movement in the shadows. Rocco was still alive, barely. Ryan knelt beside him. The women? Rocco gasped. They get away? All of them, Ryan assured him. You helped make that happen. A faint smile touched Rocco's lips. Try to stop him. Should have done it sooner. His eyes closed as paramedics rushed to his side. The storm began to ease as dawn approached. Ryan watched as police vehicles filled the forest, officers securing the scene and collecting evidence. Federal agents would arrive soon, drawn by reports of a major human trafficking operation. Ryan. He turned to see Emma running toward him, Lila close behind. His mother had clearly ignored his instructions to stay at the safe house. He caught them both in a fierce embrace, feeling the last of his combat tension drain away. You're hurt. Emma touched the gash above his eye. Just a scratch, he assured her. Are the others okay? Safe and sound, Emma smiled. Maria's already giving statements to the police. They'll all testify against Vance and anyone else involved. Lila punched his arm. Next time you go on a rescue mission, don't leave me behind. Next time? Ryan raised an eyebrow. Let's hope there isn't one. Emma looked over to where Vance was being loaded into a police vehicle. The gang leader's face was a mask of impotent rage as his empire crumbled around him. It's really over, she asked softly. Ryan nodded. The Iron Vultures are finished. Between the evidence at the compound, the testimonies, and what the police found, they're done. Good. Emma's voice hardened. Those women, the things they survived, no one should have to go through that. They survived because of you, Mom, Ryan said proudly. You gave them strength, kept them going until help could arrive. Emma shook her head. I just did what you taught me. Never give up. Never stop fighting. Speaking of fighting, Lila interrupted. The diner's going to need a new waitress. Sarah said she's looking for work once everything settles down. First, Ryan said firmly, we're all taking some time off. I've got 3 weeks of leave, and we're going to spend it together. As a family. As the sun rose over Pine Grove, the Carter family stood united, their bond stronger than ever. The Iron Vultures had thought they were targeting a simple waitress, never realizing they were dealing with a family of warriors. Not just Ryan with his SEAL training, but Emma with her quiet strength and Lila with her fierce loyalty. Police cars and federal vehicles continued to arrive as news of the Iron Vultures' fall spread. But the Carters paid them little attention. They had each other, they were safe, and for now, that was all that mattered. The storm had passed, literally and figuratively, leaving behind a cleansed forest and a town freed from fear. The long process of healing could begin, for the rescued women, for the town, and for the Carter family itself. Emma hugged her children close, overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. Her son was a hero, yes, but more importantly, he was the man she'd always hoped he'd become, strong enough to fight when necessary, but wise enough to show mercy when possible. As they walked toward their waiting car, Emma glanced back one last time at the forest that had witnessed the Iron Vulture's last stand. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting golden light through the rain-washed trees. A new day was dawning for Pine Grove, and the Carters would face it together, stronger than ever. The autumn sun painted Pine Grove in shades of gold and amber as Emma Carter stood before the newly renovated community center. The building, once a target of Iron Vulture's intimidation, now served a different purpose, a haven for healing and hope. 3 months had passed since the night of the rescue. The physical bruises had faded, but the emotional healing was an ongoing process. Emma watched as Sarah, the young runaway she protected during their captivity, arranged chairs for their weekly support group meeting. Everything ready for today? Emma asked, helping to set out water bottles and tissues. Almost, Sarah smiled, her confidence growing with each passing day. Maria called. She's bringing 2 new women who just moved back to town. Former captives who finally felt safe enough to return. Emma nodded, understanding the significance. Each return was a victory, a sign that Pine Grove was reclaiming its identity as a safe haven rather than a place of fear. Inside her office, still strange to think she had an office now, Emma reviewed the notes for today's session. Pictures of the survivors decorated one wall, their smiling faces a testament to resilience. On another wall hung newspaper clippings about the Iron Vultures' downfall and the town's recovery. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Maya entered, carrying a stack of flyers for their upcoming community awareness event. Hot off the press, Maya announced, setting them down. The printer gave us a discount. Said it was the least he could do after what you and Ryan did for the town. Emma smiled at the mention of her son. Ryan had surprised everyone, including himself, by extending his leave from the Navy. What started as a 3-week recovery period had turned into 3 months of helping rebuild not just their family, but the entire community. Speaking of Ryan, Maya continued, saw him at the hardware store earlier. He and some volunteers are fixing up Mrs. Henderson's place. Guess the Iron Vultures did quite a number on it before everything went down. He's always been good with his hands, Emma said proudly. Gets that from his father. The sound of teenage laughter drew their attention outside. Lila was arriving with a group of friends, all carrying donations for the center's clothing drive. At 17, Emma's daughter had thrown herself into community service with the same determination she brought to everything else. Mom, Lila called out, struggling with a particularly large box. Look what we found in the attic. Emma helped her daughter set down the box, which turned out to contain a beautifully crafted scrapbook. Opening it, she found pages of carefully preserved photographs and news clippings documenting Ryan's journey from high school athlete to Navy SEAL. I've been working on it since everything happened, Lila explained, turning pages to show various milestones. See? Here's his high school graduation, his first day of BUD/S training, his SEAL graduation. Emma's eyes misted as they reached newer editions. Articles about the Iron Vultures' downfall, carefully edited to protect the survivors' privacy while highlighting Ryan's role in bringing justice to Pine Grove. It's beautiful, honey, Emma hugged her daughter. Your brother will love it. Love what? Ryan's voice came from the doorway. He was dusty from construction work, but his eyes were bright with the inner peace he'd found in helping rebuild his hometown. Lila practically bounced as she presented him with the scrapbook. Ryan's expression softened as he turned the pages, reliving memories both triumphant and challenging. Squirt, this is... He paused, emotion catching in his throat. This is amazing. Well, you're kind of my hero, Lila admitted, then quickly added. But don't let it go to your head. Their family moment was interrupted by the arrival of Sheriff Bradley. The man had changed significantly since the Iron Vultures' defeat, standing straighter, speaking with renewed authority. Mrs. Carter. He removed his hat respectfully. Ryan, just wanted to stop by and give you an update. Vance's trial date is set. With all the evidence and testimonies, the prosecutor's confident he'll never see daylight again. And the others? Emma asked. Most took plea deals, turning evidence against the higher-ups. Between federal charges and state violations, the Iron Vultures are finished. I promise you, nothing like this will ever happen in Pine Grove again. Emma nodded, appreciating both the information and the sincerity of his commitment. The sheriff had worked hard to regain the town's trust, starting with a complete overhaul of department policies and personnel. Actually, he continued, that's not the only reason I'm here. The town council approved your proposal for the Survivor Support Initiative. Full funding, plus that satellite office you wanted in Riverside. Maya's eyes lit up. They'd been working on expanding their support services to neighboring towns, creating a network of resources for survivors of trafficking and abuse. That's wonderful news, Emma said warmly. Thank you, Sheriff. No, Mrs. Carter. Thank you. What you and your family did. You showed us all what real courage looks like. After the sheriff left, Emma watched through the window as Pine Grove went about its daily business. The physical scars of the Iron Vulture's presence were fading. Broken windows replaced, vandalized buildings repaired, damaged roads resurfaced. More importantly, the town's spirit was healing. Neighbors looked out for each other now, refusing to let fear take root again. The community center had become a symbol of this new unity, offering everything from counseling services to job training programs. "Mom?" Ryan's voice drew her attention back. "Got something to tell you." Emma recognized his serious expression, the same one he'd worn when he first announced his intention to become a SEAL. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell called," he began. "Offer me a promotion. Lead instructor position at the training command in Coronado." "That's fantastic." Emma started to congratulate him, then noticed his hesitation. But I told him no. At least, not right now." Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "What we're doing here, helping rebuild, supporting survivors, bringing the community together, it feels right. Important." Emma felt a surge of pride. Her son, one of the Navy's elite warriors, choosing to stay and help heal his hometown. "The teams will always be there," Ryan continued. "But right now my family needs me. Our community needs me. And your sister would kill you if you left before her graduation," Emma added with a smile. "There's that too," Ryan laughed. The day passed in a blur of activity. The support group meeting brought both tears and laughter as survivors shared their stories and progress. Maya led a self-defense class, helping women reclaim their sense of security. Lila and her friends organized donations while planning future fundraising events. Emma found quiet moments to work on her memoir between sessions. Writing about her experience was challenging, but therapeutic. She hoped her story would help others understand that survival wasn't just about enduring. It was about emerging stronger, about turning pain into purpose. As evening approached, the Carters gathered on their back porch, a family tradition that had taken on new meaning since their ordeal. Emma brought out hot chocolate, made exactly the way they all liked it. Lila curled up with her homework while Ryan tinkered with some equipment for tomorrow's construction project. "You know what I was thinking about?" Lila said suddenly. "Remember when we used to build pillow forts in the living room? Ryan would pretend they were military bases, and I was always the commanding officer. General Squirt." Ryan grinned at the memory. "Yeah, well, General Squirt needs help with her calculus homework if you're not too busy being a hometown hero." As Ryan moved to help his sister, Emma watched them with a full heart. The past months had been challenging, but they'd emerged stronger, not just as individuals, but as a family and as part of a renewed community. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maria. 2 more survivors reached out today. "They're ready to come home." Emma smiled, typing back a quick response of encouragement and support. This was her new mission, helping others find the strength to reclaim their lives, just as she had. The sun set over Pine Grove, painting the sky in brilliant colors. From their porch, Emma could see lights coming on throughout the neighborhood. No more darkness for hiding, no more shadows to fear. The town had found its courage, and with it, a new sense of purpose. "Hey, Mom," Ryan called softly. "You okay?" Emma looked at her children, her fierce, brave, compassionate children, and felt a deep sense of peace. "More than okay," she replied. "I'm grateful. For both of you, for our community, for second chances." "Group hug," Lila declared, pulling them both in. As they embraced, Emma thought about how far they'd come. The Iron Vultures had thought they could break her spirit by taking her freedom. Instead, they'd unleashed a force they never expected. The combined strength of a family's love and a community's determination to stand against injustice. The evening settled into comfortable quiet. Moths danced around the porch light while crickets provided nature's symphony. In the distance, a train whistle echoed. Once a sound that had reminded Emma of feeling trapped, now just part of Pine Grove's peaceful nighttime chorus. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More survivors to support, more healing to facilitate, more work to rebuild their community. But tonight, in this moment, Emma Carter sat with her children and felt nothing but gratitude. They had faced darkness together and emerged into light. They had transformed fear into strength, pain into purpose, and a story of captivity into one of liberation. Most importantly, they had shown that love, for family, for community, for justice, could overcome any obstacle. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Emma smiled. This wasn't just a new beginning for her family, or even just for Pine Grove. It was a reminder to everyone that hope could flourish in the most unlikely places, that courage could be found in ordinary people, and that sometimes the greatest heroes were forged not in battle, but in the quiet determination to help others heal. The Carter family sat together, sharing comfortable silence and simple companionship, their bond stronger than ever. They had survived, they had triumphed, and now they were helping others do the same. It wasn't the life Emma had imagined for herself, but looking at her children, Ryan's quiet strength, Lila's fierce compassion, she knew it was exactly where they were meant to be. The story of the Iron Vultures and their reign of terror would fade into Pine Grove's history. But the story of courage, family, and community that emerged from those dark days would be told and retold, inspiring others to stand up, speak out, and never lose hope. As night settled fully over Pine Grove, Emma Carter held her children close and knew that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, not just as survivors, but as warriors for hope, healing, and justice. What lengths would you go to protect your family? What sacrifices would you make to save someone you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story of courage, family, and justice touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling narratives that remind us why you should never underestimate the power of a mother's love. Share it with someone who appreciates a story where good triumphs over evil, and family bonds prove stronger than any force trying to break them.